All right, so today we're going to look at 8B, which is titled Investigating Reducing Balance Loans, which has nothing really to do with what you're doing. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to call it Creating a Repayment Schedule. Now, sadly, that means that on a test or an exam, they're still going to call it this nonsense, but we will work with that, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a schedule with some information for it. Now, most likely on a test, you're going to see this as a table already, and then you just have to find some missing values or something. They're probably not going to waste your whole time. Waste, terrible word. But they're probably not going to make you spend an incredible amount of time recreating a huge table. But we'll see. We'll look at the revision and see what this looks like. So what we're doing is we're going to create a table of values. And what we're looking at is a schedule for repayments. Now, you guys have never had a loan probably, so you're not worried about it. And they don't do this anymore in the computer age. Some of you may have a car loan, but back in the day, they used to give you, if you got a loan for a car or a loan for something, they would give you a repayment schedule. It was just a printout of how much you were going to pay per month, how many payments you were going to make, how much interest was being charged for that particular compounding period, and what that left your balance to be, right? So we're going to create those. And the reason we're creating those is that it really makes it easy for you to see what's happening over the course of a loan. So you'll be able to answer questions. So for example, how much interest did I pay in the 7th compounding period? Which may not seem very important to you, but hey, we got to write some kind of questions for these things, right? So here's our chart. The first column is simply the repayment number. When you first get a loan, you have made 0 repayments, so it's always going to start off with 0. And then you're going to make payments on your loans, 1, 2, 3, 4, and each one of those represents a repayment number based on how often you're told to repay the loan, right? Usually corresponds to your compounding periods. Then the next column, I'm going to abbreviate as capital R because you're supposed to know what that means. What does capital R stand for? The repayment amount, right? So this is the repayment amount. Okay? Then the next column is interest paid. So this is the amount of interest that you're going to pay during that compounding period. So and we'll talk about how to find each one of these values in just a moment. They're very easy to find. Then you're going to have a column called principal reduction. I'm going to go ahead and write it all out, even though it takes up too much space. The principal reduction simply means how much did your payment after the interest you paid reduce the amount you owe? Because paying off what you owe is kind of the point, right? Yeah. And then finally, you have the balance. And that means how much you owe after you've made your payment. Okay? Now remember, they're going to charge you interest on the top, on what you owe. Then they'll take out your payment amount, right? And then you get your balance. So if you paid $500, you're not actually getting $500 in reduction, right? Because you're going to have added interest into that already. In your beginning amounts, these things are all 0 because you just borrowed the money, you haven't made any payments. And so here is your A sub 0, also called the principal, right? So you're going to start off with the principal. And then from there, you're going to be finding the other pieces, okay? Well, R is easy, so let's always start with that.
So does that say on there, does that say
A sub 0. Yeah. Fill in R column. Because it never changes. You're going to pay the same amount all the way down, right? Generally, that's how payments are done. They just figure out how much you're going to owe at the end, and then they divide it by however many payments you're going to make, and then you make that many payments. Now, that's not always true in some of these examples because they like to make them like $500 or $400. But in reality, if you had a home loan or a car loan or something, they would give actual figures so that at the very end, you don't owe like 32 cents or something. They would give you payments that would be like $432.76 or something. Right? But here they keep them nice. They keep the numbers nice and even for you. But recognize that that's just a mathematical model that we're using. Doesn't reflect reality. So say we're paying $500. Then I would just put 500. Oops, it's $5,000. I would just put 500 all the way down. And yes, you have to write it all the way down. Okay.
Is that 500 or 5,000?
Well, it's 500. I just wrote 5,000 in the first one because you know how I am. All right. Okay? Then, the next column we need is how much interest we're paying. And to find the interest, you simply multiply your A times the previous value of the loan. We've done that 1,000 times, right? Now, we haven't looked at it so independently, but what we're doing is just the interest. Now, notice that's I, not R. If you do R, you're going to get the future amount, right? We just want the interest amount. Does that make sense? Okay. So be careful. This one is a little bit different in what you need to do. You're just looking for the amount of interest. You're not looking for the amount. Pardon?
What is I?
That always stands for the previous balance.
Why is there 0 next?
Then the next thing we want to do is we want to find the principal reduction, okay? And we've done that before, okay? It's part of that interest formula that we did before, right? So we're just simply going to take the repayment minus the interest, right? And that just gives us how much is being paid. So how much of the actual money that you paid is going toward reducing your balance, right? You just subtract how much they added on from what you paid. Then, step 4. I'm just going to try to get this all on one page for you. Step 4. We want to find the balance of the loan. Now, the balance just means to take off what you paid from what you owed, right? But remember that we didn't pay the whole amount in our principal. I can't spell principal. In our principal reduction. Our principal reduction was less than the full payment. So we're just going to take the previous balance and subtract the principal reduction. Now notice that I'm keeping these all in order. So right, each column in order. So think about those in order. Okay? And then in these, they often ask you for a specific value of amount of interest paid. Now there are two ways you can go about this. The book likes to use a formula, but if you have a column called interest paid, I could just add up the interest I paid and get this without having some fancy formula, right? Yeah? Just add up the interest that's in the columns. But we had a formula for finding interest paid. We did last time. The number of payments times the payment amount minus the principal minus the balance at a given time. That's the same formula we used last time. So they're just trying to have some continuity so you can practice with that formula. And remember, this formula is not on your formulas page. You have to just remember how to compute that. Okay? All right. Okay, so once you fill out this chart, then you're able to then you can go bounce it around and answer information. For example, I might ask you, how much interest did you pay in the 4th compounding period? Well, if you have a chart with all these values, then you can focus in on that information quite easily. Okay? And so those are the kinds of questions you're going to be asked when we fill out the chart. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
What's this?
So here's our scenario. $8,400 at 11.4% compounded monthly with a repayment of $500 a month. And we're going to construct a schedule for the first 5 repayments. So the first thing we know is we have our payment number. Now, I'm abbreviating here because I'll run out of room if I don't. When I initially take out the loan, how many payments have I made? None, right? So you're always going to start with 0. And we want to do this for the first 5 payments. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so they're going to give you a number of payments that they want you to build the schedule for. All right, again, I've abbreviated number of repayments as R number. That's the hashtag is the symbol for number. You remember that? Probably not. Y'all are too young. The next thing I want is the payments. When you first... No, I'm jealous. When you're first making the loan, have you made any repayments yet? No. So it's 0 there. But then in this case, they're paying back $500. So that's $500 every month. Okay? Now, the next column that we need is the interest paid. And when you first borrow the money, you're paying no interest on it because you just got it, right? Okay? But after that, there's going to be something in that. We're going to have to do some math to find the rest of them. The next one is your principal reduction. Now, all of these are written out in the other one, so if you can't understand my abbreviations, then go back and look at the notes. All right, principal reduction. Again, you didn't reduce the principal by any the first time when you got the loan, so that's going to be all zeros all the way across. And then finally, we want the balance. And when we first borrow the money, the balance is the principal amount. So $8,400. Does it make sense? The first row of the column is always going to look like that. All zeros and then the balance, then your principal amount at the end. Now what we need to do is I'm going to have to find interest, which means I'm going to have to find, I need an I value. And my interest is 11.4% monthly. So I'll change 11.4 to a decimal, 0.114. But since it's monthly, I need the interest rate per compounding period. So that's not the number I'm going to use. What am I going to have to do? Divide by 12, exactly. Okay? And when you do that, you get an interest amount of 0.0095. Okay? So all I did was change the interest to a decimal, divide it by 12, just like we've done on everything we've done this whole term, right? Now, once I know that, then to find the interest paid, all I have to do is multiply my balance times my interest. So, to find the interest paid on the first thing, I'm just going to take my 8,400 times 0.0095. Now, I'm going to do the first one, and y'all are going to do the others, so pay attention and get out your calculators. Okay. When you do that, you get $79.80. Now remember, it's money, so make sure you put it in as cents, right? Round it to 2 decimal places. Okay? So that's simply the amount of interest that the bank charges me on my initial during my first payment. Okay? Now, we need to see how much that reduced my principal. So what was the principal reduction? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take R minus that interest paid. And that's going to tell me how much principal reduction I got out of my payment, right? Because not all of your money, not all of your $500 is going to go to reducing the principal. Some of it's going to be used to pay interest, okay? So in this particular case, I paid $500, right? But I was charged $79.80 in interest, yeah? So in reality, only $420.20 went towards reducing how much I owe. Does that make sense? So $420.20 goes there. Now, I didn't reduce my balance by $500, but I did reduce it by some. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply take my balance minus my principal reduction. So my balance initially was $8,400. Minus, I reduced my principal by that amount. So if I subtract those, I get $7,979.80. Okay? So you're just subtracting the previous one, the next one from the previous one, basically. Okay? Hold on just 1 second. I'm just going to call on someone. So here I'll do the first one. First, I need to find out the interest paid, or charged, you should really say. So that's simply taking the interest amount times the balance. And my new balance is this number there, right? Not the $8,400 anymore. And that's why you can't do it all at one time. All right? So multiplying our amount of interest times our new balance says that this time, the bank is going to take off $7,581. Now, we now have to find out the reduction, which just means I need to take that amount of interest off the amount of payment so I can find out how much of the money actually goes towards my balance. So now we're going to find the interest on the new principal amount. Our new balance is... So it's just the interest times the payment amount to get this column. Then you subtract those two to get this column. Subtract that from the previous balance to get that column.